Hey everybody, welcome to Now It's Dark. I'm Jim. Thanks for tuning in to this video review for The Camp Host 2024 film, 1 hour and 35 minutes. I watched this on Tubi. It's a horror thriller about a character named Sadie, a young Native American van lifer, and her husband Ed find their trip derailed when they spend the night in a campground overseen by a maniacal woman who brutally punishes campers that don't follow her rules. She's the camp host. I've never been familiar with the term camp host. Maybe it's a thing. If you go camping in some of these remote like pop-up camp sites, you know, not big trailer campsites, but these little like, I don't know, foresty kind of camps where you pop a tent or you have like a little RV. And this camp host is a real thing. Let me know because it's very intriguing to me. Written and directed by Henry Darrow McComas, and stars. Sadie is played by Rachel Caldwell. She's our main Native American lead. Her husband, Ed, is played by Dylan Casey, and the camp host is played by Brooke Johnson, who's creepy as F. And we have a neighboring camper, John Tench. He plays Frank. And then we have Eric Kunsen playing Blake and Vincent Tran playing Terrence. And Eric Kunsen, I recognized immediately. I was like, where is this kid from? He was in Scream 4 and Saw 2. He might have even been the son of the main police officer in Saw 2. And yeah, so it opens up to the two, husband and wife traveling in the van, and they got their dog Milo or Maiko or whatever. And I don't know, they did a weird job establishing what the dynamics of the relationship are. I hate movies that do this. Like they go overboard to try to make sure we understand that there's tension between the two of them. Um, Ed doesn't seem to be like 100% on board with the van life, and um, his job allows him to work remotely. So he's doing it because it's not really 100% impacting his um, his work life. Sorry, I can hear construction workers outside. A little distracting. Um, so at any rate, they go to this camp. They meet the camp host. Have a very very strange exchange between Sadie and the camp host. The camp host kind of like has hippie vibes going on. Definitely impresses upon them the importance of the rules. She keeps referring to Sadie as Thunderbird, and um, recognizes her Native American roots and kind of talks on that. And it's just weird. Um, and then we get things to amp up when um, we're introduced to the other characters. You know, cannon fodder is what I would call them, because you have to have more people to kill. So you have to introduce a whole bunch of characters at the beginning of the film, and we do that. Then we have like a little time where the relationship seems fine between Sadie and Ed, and we get a little campfire thing going on, and neighbor Frank comes over, and they're talking about the camp host and how nobody knows what her name is, and Frank happens to have some insight into her history from a previous campsite in Yellowstone, and we get shots of Blake and Terrence having their little camp out, and Blake is getting obliterated because he's brokenhearted from having broken up. They end up at the campsite with the other three, and um, then uh, Blake kind of wanders off to use the bathroom. I failed to mention that, of course, because we're in the remote woods, we've established that there's no real good cell connection. And that is a common thread, like I've mentioned in previous reviews, where movies nowadays have to establish why you can't use your cell phone. And it's because they're in the remote location that they're in. And the only place that gets a somewhat reception cell service is the outhouse, which are gross, by the way. I hate outhouses. I don't understand how anybody will ever take a poop in an outhouse, but we have an occasion where somebody does go to take a poop in an outhouse and it doesn't end very well. So if you didn't like outhouses and taking poops in them before, after you watch this movie, you will not want to do that. So we get more confrontation between camp hosts. Sadie sees things going on and puts together. Oh, they didn't put their fire out. They left their fire unattended. Some of the rules were basic rules, actually. Like they would be rules that you would expect. They weren't like over the top, like crazy rules that didn't seem reasonable. They were, don't leave your fire unattended. Make sure that you put your fire out before you go to sleep. Keep your dog on a leash. Keep your dog with you at all times. Um, for the sake of all the campers, after 10 p.m., it's quiet time. No loud shenanigans and things like that. So we get all the rules told to us at the beginning. They're re-mentioned again, and then we see the result of people that have chose to not stick to the rules. And yeah, so to be spoiler free, I can't really say much more about this because it is such a small cast. But the creep value is pretty good with the camp host. I thought maybe they were going to go in like a supernatural direction with this, and I can't really tell if they did, because the ending was where you think a certain person had died, but apparently maybe they didn't, and it's one of those open-ended endings where the happy couple are driving, still van lifers. We fast forward 1 year later, still van lifing, but they decide to go to the extreme other coast, um, to the East Coast, particularly Maine, and um, they kind of replay a sequence that happens at the beginning of the film, but they go in a different direction for it, which makes sense because they didn't do the way they talked about in the first one. They ended up at that camp where the camp host terrorized them. So yeah, the camp host is an unhinged, fun movie. It's got some gore to it. It's not terrifically horrifying as far as like you don't get a lot of stalker kind of POV of killer following people, but you do get a lot of weird stuff. Though it wasn't a bad movie. It's one of the better ones on Tubi. Um, so I was glad that I did watch this. It was pretty fun and definitely different. It was one movie that I feel was original enough that I was definitely engaged in the film. So that's all you can really ask for nowadays. There's so much horror that comes out, particularly when there's services like Tubi, where um, relatively very low budget movies can be released to a mass audience. Um, we have a flood of horror, and anyone who doesn't think that there's been a lot of horror released this year is sadly mistaken. There is horror popping up on a daily basis, some in the mainstream, some in the low streams, direct to streams, and it is quality of all levels. So I put this one kind of like in the middle of that. It's not a movie that would have done well if it had been released to theaters, but it's a movie that's going to do well on Tubi. I think Tubi is a good place for this movie. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you've watched this, if you're going to check it out. What do you think of Tubi? It's a rabbit hole, right? Thanks for tuning in to my review of The Camp Host, and keep coming back to the channel for more great stuff.
Row 18, plot 20.